Tina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Christian.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've heard really, really good things about you and definitely, interested in hearing about your journey and story.
I am interested in sharing it.
All righty. Before I get into the meat of it, I kind of want to go on a tangent because I've read so much about how faith is probably the biggest thing in your life. And I want to kind of know where that started and how it's changed your life and kind of the trajectory that you see yourself on.
Well, I've ever since I was a young child, I've always been a believer. I think just through different circumstances in my childhood, I God just showed up different in different ways, and He always confirmed that He was there. I could sense His presence, and like everybody that journeys through life, you're going to hit roadblocks and obstacles, and so I have had those. I have had the obstacles that everyone else would have in life at some point, and through that though I've had a lot of maturation, and actually this last season has been a huge time of reflection, and because I just empty nested, and so a lot of it was just reflecting on what did I do right as a mother, what convictions I had and all that. And so a faith journey is one that it's always evolving, and I think it's sometimes it can be one of those things where you take two steps forward and a step back. It's a huge maturation process. I do know about 6 or 7 years ago, I had a huge conviction to start growing. And if you think about the time between testaments in the Bible, it says at the time, there's a time where there was a lot of tragedy going on, but it also was a time of fermentation. And if you think about what fermentation is, it's a process that evolves into something much better, right? Something good. Like if we were to think about, wine, the Bible is very clear about some of that, and how good wine is something that has a long fermentation process. And so I remember being at that time, in between chapters in my life, and feeling that this was a time of wait, it was a time of growth, it was also a time of tragedy. And I think during that time it was like, all right, you've got some decisions to make of which way you're going to go. And I've chosen to just continue to grow and face every day and every obstacle with prayer and petition and just hope. And this last year has been a focus of love, and like that, I was going to try to be a person that can demonstrate love, through perseverance and protection, and the understanding that it never fails, and that where I fail, love can sustain me. Mm-hmm. And then just also just really understanding that there's a huge human side to faith, that we are not perfect, we are going to fail a lot, and that's the beauty of it, right? Is that we have a Savior who allows for us to fail.
No, thank you for opening up and sharing that. I'm a huge believer that things always happen for a reason, and it may take you like a year to even understand why something happened in your life. Like looking back, me tearing my ACL was the biggest blessing in disguise that I've ever experienced, because of how much I grew as not just a rugby player, but as a person. And I think when you can attach your faith and your belief to something bigger than yourself, and especially bigger than the moment, it almost gives you, a fresher breath air, and just that assurance that whatever's happening in that present moment is for the right reason.
I agree with that. I've been through an ACL tear. It was not fun, not fun at all. And been through a cancer scare, and raised two teenage boys. That you can put that into a couple different categories. Some might say it's a challenge. Some might say it's a blessing. I think it's both.
Absolutely, as is everything. So let's take it back, and this is typically where I start these conversations. Is I want to learn a little bit about your childhood, where you came from, and what about that is important for me and everyone to know a little bit more about Tina.
Oh wow, let's see. I grew up a military brat. My dad was a lifer in the Navy, retired an E9 Master Chief, and he married my mother, who was his high school sweetheart. Mm. And So and they're still married today, 50 some years of marriage. And
Amazing.
uh, so I had two parents that demonstrated um, what it's like to be committed to one another, but also committed to a lifestyle of serving their country, right? And so my dad being Navy, we lived, oh gosh, I lived in Texas as well, in Corpus.
Yep.
I lived in California numerous times. It seemed like we always came back to California between command changes, or different things. We lived in Utah. I lived in Washington State as a child. And then my last count was I went to 7 elementary schools. So I was constantly adapting. I have a younger brother, I have a younger sister. My brother is um, was born with a disability that left him legally blind. So I had a family that had various dynamics. And I think because of that and the moving around and always adapting, you gain skills that allow for you to just chase after different things career wise and face different things in life that could easily destroy you.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, my dad served some time in the Navy, and I know that my childhood and kind of everything he believed in and stood for really, really shaped me and gave me the foundation to, the discipline, the structure, and whatnot, that mentality, go chase everything and anything you want in life. And everything he taught me was kind of the roadmap to get there. Like all those disciplines and values and beliefs in myself and everything was so pivotal in my life. Because my childhood definitely shaped who I am today and gave me an amazing platform. And it sounds like you had a similar one.
I believe I did. I sometimes the discipline thing is not always there, but I definitely know when I was younger, it was something that was I was a very much more structured. I think as a
Mm.
younger kid, as I've gotten a little older, I'm more. I think the routine is the word I like to use.
Yeah, maybe a little more balanced. But it's funny, like you kind of the younger years, especially when you're like chasing something so relentlessly, it is all discipline went on. You're making so many sacrifices, and there is no balance kind of in your life. And then maybe once you reach that point, or once you get older, you can kind of look back and be like, now I can enjoy a little more in life, and maybe have a little more balance in my life. It's funny how you kind of hit that pivot.
Yeah, I think when you're in the career field of sports or coaching or even as an athlete, I think it is really difficult to find balance, right? Is that really a true thing, right? I mean, we strive for it, but I don't know if that's always realistic. I think we try to work it in at moments in our life, but I'm not sure because there's times when I'll be at work late at night and I didn't have that balance.
Yeah,
But it didn't mean that something bad came out of it, right?
sure,
I think
sure.
there's think of it more of a sliding scale, right? And as you're going along your timeline of life, you're just going to have these this sliding scale that happens, and there's going to be times when you're not balanced, and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so that I think it's more along the lines of priorities in the moment. What is the priority in the moment? I think that might be for me personally a better way to look at it.
No, I love that. But here's the thing is like, no, I don't think anybody that has gone on to do what they really, really dreamed of or have done some amazing things really had balance in that pursuit. And I think that's something that's totally okay.
Yeah.
Because so many people are like, you need balance, you need balance. And it's like, well, do you really?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we at times try to have that, right? I think we've been told that that's what's going to bring you, I guess, comfort or whatever,
Yeah.
or whole. I'm not so sure about it though. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think that, obviously when we can achieve balance, it's a good thing. And sports is a rugby player, right? If we think just getting into that athletic stance that's balanced, it's going to give you things like power. It's going to give you things that allow for you to use your speed, use your strength, and all that. So definitely balance is a good thing. But there's also those times when we perform when we're off balance too, right?
Mm,
And
mm.
those are those times where like as a hitter, So, you just one drops in, and it didn't look pretty, but you got the job done.
Yeah, that's so true. So here's $1 million question. What dream were you chasing?
Currently, I'm chasing a dream of coaching professionally in baseball and possibly managing one day. I just finished my first full year with the Cardinals,
Wow.
and so that's one of those things. I think it's yet to be decided how that'll go. I think being new into the realm of baseball, I think it go a couple different directions, and so I'm really just trying to prepare myself to be the best coach I can be and make an impact, and then see where that takes me. It might be that when I find out that maybe manager is not a best fit, though it's something that I would like to do. I do have experience in that realm. We'll just see where it works in the baseball field. So currently, that's one of my goals, is to be a coach and one day a manager. Who knows? It might be farm director. I learned a little bit more about the farm position this year, and I really do like that, what that position entails.
Wow, but from what I gathered, when you were first hired, as a Cardinals on-field coach, you had a pretty quick there was a pretty quick pause button with COVID. And so can you just, I mean, I would love to hear about that experience and what was going through your mind and what you learned from that.
Yeah, I just arrived at spring training, and we jumped right into professional scout school. I had done some amateur scouting prior to that, and got to do it then at the professional ranks. Matt Slater was our instructor. He did a great job with the classroom part of the things, and then we went out to actual spring training games, and then evaluated and wrote reports on the athletes we were looking at. And as soon as that concluded, we got right into practice. And 3 days, I think it was 3 days, maybe 2, 3 days, I can't even remember, they sent everybody home. And when we got home, we went right into back into video scouting, because we were preparing for the draft. And then right after that, everybody got shut down and put on inactive, which was a little discouraging. I tell people I never unpacked my boxes that I took. I had boxes of stuff that I took. I never unpacked all of them, because I was planning to go back and prepared to go back. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. I still left them packed, though. They stayed in my garage for a year. And it was a little discouraging. I know people asked, are you disappointed? Yeah, I am, but I remained hopeful that we would get through this and do that. In reflection, looking back at that, it was probably a little weighed on me a little heavier than I thought, because during that time I lost my colleague and mentor to COVID.
Mm.
And that was probably that there was the heaviest piece, because finding good mentors is really difficult.
Wow. Okay. So then you were one of the first, females that organization hired. I want to know kind of why you think you were that person, and everything before that. What did you learn and develop to get to that point?
Why was I chosen for that job? Well, I would hope that through the vetting process, either the vetting process that I am aware of, or the vetting process that I wasn't unaware of, which I think the Cardinals did a great job on. I think through that, they realized that I had the durability, the perseverance piece. I told them I was bold. They challenged me on that. I believe that, the interview process, I gave a good interview, but more importantly, I believe the vetting process that they put me through proved that, I was up for the job. And I think I want to trust that. I also believe there's a big purpose behind all this. When I made the decision to go into baseball, I felt like it was more of a calling than it was just a decision to a career change. And I've chosen to approach it like that, because I want a sense, a bigger sense of I just don't want it to be a job. I don't want this just to be an everyday job that I do and get bored with, or, you know, end up not liking in the end. So I'm chosen to look at it more as a calling. And to me, that challenges me to understand my role a little bit better.
Um, so but what was that calling with baseball? Because you left the sport, softball that you played your whole life, and now you're entering, a male version of the game, so to speak. What was calling you?
Uh, well, spiritually, it was just I think this the abundance that's going to be on this other side, kind of like the story of just where Jesus told him, cast your nets on the other side, and that there was just going to be more abundance in the sense of just the ability to coach and interact with people in a different capacity, that there's just going to be abundance in various areas of the game. And that for me personally, I think it was that it was our professional game has really struggled. It's that we've done a good job as keeping the professional game around, but it's struggled a little bit. And I think this was just the opportunity to be able to get into the professional ranks.
Was it tough going into baseball where it's mostly dominated by males?
No, honestly, I've had the question before, and I have not had any bad experiences in regards to the gender piece, right? The gender piece to me has not been an issue.
Okay.
And if it is, I was not aware of it. Sometimes I think I can be a little naive to those things, but that can be a good thing as well. I've been very fortunate. I have not had any feelings of discrimination or a lack of faith, or or you can't do this. And if anything, people have been more than helpful, and or I want, or they sometimes maybe they feel like they cannot be themselves. That still working through that comfortable piece of be yourself. It's all good. That's probably the biggest thing. And then for me personally is just adjusting to a different approach to the game, right? I think, but as far as there being a difference is that we're creating any obstacles, I have not had that, and I'm very thankful for that.
Okay, biggest difference between coaching males and females?
Biggest difference. Ooh, I haven't even really thought about that. Well, I the Florida coach used to say, he had a saying that was like, the males have to play good to feel good, right? And that the girls have to feel good to play good. And so I don't know if I take that perspective necessarily, but that was one, from an expert in the game. That was from one of our professionals in the game, that he gave that perspective, which I think can be pretty unique and pretty accurate at times. I personally think that if you're looking for differences, then you can find them. If you're not, then you can be pretty, lateral. I mean, there's the stereotypes, right? That are
Sure,
out there.
sure. Wow,
But
thinking about that, like it almost seems, I don't know, like comes down to the where your identity lies, because I think especially in like male sports, a big issue is letting sport and what you do become your identity. So when it's not going your way, then you're not feeling good.
yeah. And I think you see that in the women's sports as well, especially at your high achievers, that
Absolutely.
um I know that that's the good thing I think about the girls game was, for the girls. So at the collegiate levels, you had your career that you were also pursuing as well. It wasn't just a sport. I know you, because of the opportunity to play professionally, you're probably going to see more guys that can, put their eggs in all in one basket to pursue a professional career. So sometimes when you go back and talking about balance on that, you'll probably just see more males that have the opportunity to have a higher level commitment there, because they're not having to balance always the career. Am I going to go my career field or my sport field? They can
Or
make sport, their career. Now, there is opportunity, in the girls' game, but it's just very slim compared to the opportunity in the guys' game. I'm
That,
sure we can do the math and the percentages and all of that.
that's so, I mean, that's funny you say that, because I've had these conversations with um, a buddy of mine on the national team, our captain actually, and we talk so much about finding passions, hobbies, whatever it may be outside of your sport, and how much that actually plays a role in your performance on the field. And I've realized from my own experiences that the more I do outside of the game of rugby, the more time and energy I invest into things that I really enjoy outside the game, the better I am on the field.
Yeah, I know that that was one thing with some of the guys this year. They were talking about that they were utilizing the benefit of going to school, so they did. And some of them considered it a backup plan, and some of them considered it just the ability to grow, right? This is what I'm doing outside of baseball. This is, so they didn't tie up their identity just in their sport.
Wow. Okay. Now we're gonna go into my favorite topic, and it's like, how do you get the best out of, in your case, it's your players, and for me, it's my teammates and whatnot. And I think it comes down to understanding them as a person way before them as a player. Where do you see that?
So when I first started coaching, I wanted to cross my T's and dot my everything. And I felt like in many ways, the environment that I was creating was overly controlled. That was when I was a younger coach. And what I was finding was, like, I thought it was my preparation. Like I was doing my job to prepare, in all these areas. But as I matured as a coach, what I realized was actually the more freedom I gave my players, the more I got out of them. So I loosened up the rules. I let them be part of making the expectations and of the team. And what I realized too was that I had to understand what it was that they wanted to achieve. Do you want to go to the national championships? I will be a facilitator to help you do that. But if you don't go, then I would have to find a way for them to motivate them and inspire them, or get the people in there that wanted to recruit the people in that wanted to do that. And so like, for example, when I coached at the British national team level, when I had a strength-based focus to focus on their strengths, and I gave them freedom to use those strengths, that meant that they could call their own game. They could call the pitches, which I tried to do as much as I could with, give them that freedom. I don't like to call pitches from the dugout, though I have done it. I'm guilty
Yep.
of doing it. I don't like that being controlled piece. I found that when I give them the freedom to make those mistakes, in those moments, they are handling the pressure situation and making the decisions. And I found that I got more out of them when I started to give them that freedom. And that's just, the calling pitches was just one example. But yeah, for me, I think it's just giving the athletes freedom to play the game rather than trying to highly control it.
So just giving them the confidence that they're in control and I'm here to help you, in whatever regard.
Yeah, I'm here to help facilitate this, to remind you that help you with your preparation, remind you that you're prepared, and, encourage you to get out there and execute the game.
One of the best coaches I had, he sat down and told me that, the reason you're selected is because of what you're good at. It's not because of what you need to work on. And I think his confidence in my ability to do things helped me not worry about, parts of my game or whatever that I still need to work on. And I think that mindset shift, honestly, was a big game changer for me.
It's the power of belief, right? It's the power of belief. I think that's huge. Again, when I was a younger coach, I had an athlete approach me, and she was sharing about, she had a lack of belief in the moment, right? And I remember just repeating what I had heard from coaches in my past and thinking that I was doing the right thing, right? So I'm like, well, it's hard for me to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself. That's a young coach mistake. And And that was probably one of the things I regretted in that moment, because after it came out of my mouth, within hours, I was like, ooh, that's not what I believe. That's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
it really hit me hard that it was my job to believe in her when she didn't believe, and then teach her how to believe in herself. And so I think that's another thing as a coach, is teaching athletes to self-coach, teaching them also how to believe in themselves in the moment when, pressure's on, or you're in a slump, or it's the mundane daily stuff.
Then how do you get, players out of slump? Because you see it so often where there's parts of a season or even a year where, players underachieving, and I think it completely comes down to those conversations that they're having with themselves. So, how do you approach those situations?
Oh, the slumps, right? Well, there's various ways to get out of slumps, right? And sometimes it could be something as something superstitious, right? That's baseball is highly superstitious with things at times. So it could be something as silly as, like you just continue to wear your dirty socks, whatever it might be, right? um, I think you really have to know your athlete if you're going to help work them through a slump, because some of them just need to work through it. They just have to continue working through it. They don't need to change anything. They just have to continue putting in the reps. And then there's players that, they need to take a break from it. They just need to put it down. Like you said, go do something off the field to where they can just refresh, recharge, and then come back, and revisit it.
Nope.
And some need a little bit of that, like, micro adjustment, and some of them just need to talk through it. I think understanding the player and what they're going to need in that moment is going to be huge.
Sure. And I mean, I'm at the point where I've learned that not every day is going to be great. Not every day is gonna I'm going to play my best. And so I don't have to put the pressure on myself to be perfect and have perfect streaks and whatnot, because sometimes that's just unrealistic.
Yeah, well, I think perfection in the game is unrealistic.
You can strive for it, but
I mean, even when we say somebody threw a perfect game, we can look back through that entire, whatever, something, and it's
find
something,
something wrong.
right? And it's really a game with a lot of flaws,
Yeah.
very much like life. But I think that um, when we talk about the slump, or any of that piece of it, is like, just knowing that you're going to have another opportunity, and I think that's the great thing about the game, is it can be forgiving, right? And you'll get that other opportunity, whether it's, or the opportunity doesn't come for you, because remember, it's a team sport. So it may not come to you exactly, but it comes to the guy behind you to pick you up. And I think that's important to point out as well, that when somebody's struggling in a slump, they have to have a good chemistry with their team, or they have to have the perspective that their teammates can also help them get through that as well. I know when it comes to the offensive game, one of the things that I've taught in the past is, if you can say your teammate's name, like, let's say you just struck out, okay, and the quicker you recover, right? And I utilize saying a teammate's name, their nickname, their number, where you quickly engage with your teammates and what's going on, the less focus you have on yourself. And I have that technique to work really, really well, because it's very easy to get caught up in the moment of just your poor failures and have that pity party. So it worked for me when I played, and I've had young athletes that it's worked for them as well. So I think that recovery process will keep you not only out of slumps, but also get you out of slumps quickly as well.
Oh, so you're saying me as a teammate, if I see Joe over here struggling to say their name, and that quickly almost detaches their mind from that situation. Is that what you're saying?
So let's say I just struck out. I'm
Yep.
not happy. I'm not happy I struck out. My teammates know I'm not happy I struck out. But when I come back in that dugout, I do what I needed to do, get the water, put my equipment up. But the quicker I can communicate to a teammate, okay, and engage with a teammate, the sooner I'm going to recover. Because it might be that I communicate what happened during that at bat. Maybe it's just a word of encouragement, a high five, hey Sue, go get it, right? Whatever it might be, the sooner I engage back with my team, the quicker I'm going to get out of that.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
So I'm not putting it on my teammates that they have to come approach me, because there's some athletes that are just unapproachable, right?
Yeah.
In moments of failure. So I'm talking on the maturation piece from a personal perspective, that when I struggle or when I fail, I need to engage quickly back in the game and back with my teammates, then removing myself for a moment to cool down, or a moment when, for me, I found that the quicker I recover to engage back in the game with my teammates, that failure recovery took over quicker.
How'd
And
you learn this?
I utilize saying the name as a way to measure that and engage. It makes it a little more personal.
And how'd you learn this?
It was something that I developed it when I was in college myself.
Mm.
And then as I was so I did it as a teammate. Whether, again, I might just say a name, right? But then when I started coaching, I started to understand how do I teach this now, right? How do I teach this? So I just started teaching the say the name piece of it to the athletes I was working with, baseball and softball. And they claimed it worked. They stayed out of the slumps longer. I mean, I don't have any measurables on that, because it was
Yeah.
back before they were measuring those things, but it definitely had positive results. Let's say that.
And that's the
Positive.
thing, if it works for you, it doesn't matter if it's right, wrong, if
Yeah.
it's proven, if it's disproven, like, and that's the only thing that matters is if it's right in your mind.
Yeah. And I think too, that goes back to like some of the superstitious, right? Sometimes it could just be a crazy thing that gets you out, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's the fun thing about the game, is it doesn't always have to make sense. It just, if you connect with it and you run with it and it helps you produce, and I think that's a positive thing.
When you were playing and growing up, were you driven by winning or the fear of failure?
I don't think, I would have to say winning. Um, Failure, I think I did a pretty good job with the failure piece of not letting that linger too long. I think if you're finding success, I think is also a demonstration that the failure piece is, you're doing okay with that, right? That I definitely failed a lot. I think what I did was I allowed for those failures to be part of it. You have to let it. The game is going to be good, bad, ugly, right? And it's going to be unkind. You have to let the times when the game's unkind to you also be part of that, right? If you don't allow for that, you're not going to understand or appreciate your victory, your small victories as well.
Hmm.
But I liked winning. I think I was motivated, right? But I wasn't held back by losing. I had 1 year or a couple years, and I'd taken a team to the World Series and went with one program, and we were in the conference championships. And then I came to another program, and we were like on the bottom, and that wasn't good. It was a time when I questioned a lot of things of like what I was doing correctly to, it was a struggle to really understand that dynamic of how we were still on the bottom, and what I contribute that to is just, it was just a different mindset. That the girls I had here, they wanted to win. The girls here, they didn't set their goals to win, it was just that different thing. So personally, I struggled with the different dynamics of that, because having come from the programs, and my 18 under coach was a St. Louis Cardinal. So I didn't realize that until I had been hired in 2020, and I was like, wow, I've known this for a very long time, and I didn't even know it.
Hmm.
But so the winning piece, I think, has really been what is, it's fun to win, right?
I love it. Play to
It's fun.
win.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think and in 97, my college team, like, our slogan was in it to win it. Like, why are we going to play if we're not going to compete to win? And I think one of the most frustrating things when I'll pose a question to coaches, I'm like, hey, how's the team look this year? Right. And you'll get these coaches that they hesitate, right? They hesitate, like, we got to do this, we got to do that, and I love it when I hear coaches say, we're ready to go, we're looking to win big, you know.
Yep.
But often does that happen?
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
it's a risk to say that, right? It's a risk to,
Absolutely. Because on the flip side of that
you,
is losing, is talking too big. I mean, there is a flip side of
yeah,
that.
there is a flip side to that.
But
But
that's the thing, is it's so important. I mean, if you're not playing to win, or if you're not believing that you can actually do this, I mean, good luck.
yeah, definitely want to play to win. I mean, I know some of my best memories of my playing days or even my coaching days. It's been when we've won, but not just winning big too. I think winning big is, yeah, that's good
It's a
to
good
get
thing.
that ring or achieve that medal. It's
Okay.
definitely, but
I
it's not
read I read that you're the comeback coach, whether
the,
that's the article talking or, whatnot. But how, I want to know, like, the conversations you're having with your team in games where you're down. What's that like, and why are you the comeback coach?
oh, I have not heard that.
Oh, well, I'll have to send you what I read.
Okay.
It was a cool article. It just talks about how you've come back from losses so many times.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I know that's been the case.
Yeah.
um, I think that my perspective has always been like, as long as there is an inning left, as long as there's an out left, I've always just thought that there's just always a possibility. I remember the team I was talking about, how we hadn't had a chance to. Actually, it's the stupid Dumb and Dumber thing where he goes, "Well, you're saying I have a chance, right?" So
Yep.
I think that that's probably the biggest thing, is that I'm always if you're in a winning mindset and you're wanting to win big, you have to always be looking for opportunity to where, like, you can still make it happen. And I think that, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, is the fact that that's how I'm always trying to find a way to win. I don't like to give up on something, or that just that feeling of that we're defeated. The hardest thing to do is, like, if you're going through a season and your team has put your position themselves where you moving on is contingent on another team
Mm,
losing or
yeah.
another team winning, right? I think that's one of the hardest things to do. So I think, is if you are always looking for opportunity to win and succeed, then you're in that winning mindset, to where you can make things happen, even when it's like the last out or whatever. I think that's very important. Um, just not giving up. I just don't like to give up.
No, no. I mean, that's just in your DNA and your blood. But say you guys, failure happens, loss happens. How are you approaching that with your team? And what are sort of, what's that mindset that you're trying to get your players in, to just use, a loss or a failure as just like a data point?
A lot. I think you can always pull good uh, out of a loss, right? If you unfold a game, you can see where it went well, and you can see where it might have went wrong, right? And so I think that when I'm talking with a team and we're in a position where we have to reflect on something to move forward, it's important to just unwind that game there, and make notes, but also say that this is, if we have to make an adjustment or a pivot, we do that. If not, then we just continue on, because it might have been just one of those things where the team got the best of us that day.
Mm.
I know the team I took to the World Series, we got beat in the Super Regionals, and the talk after the game was like, well, they just kicked our butts, right? They just took it to us. However, I said, they've got one pitcher. They're going to use her for the next 2 games. She is not in pitching shape to go the next 2 games. I said, so what you're gonna know is that her rise ball is gonna flatten out. We're gonna hit the rise ball. We're gonna win this game. We'll win this series. But you got to trust these things that we're gonna continue playing strong ball. We're gonna continue focused on winning and going advancing. And the one thing you're gonna look for is the fact that this pitcher on the opposing team she's not gonna go the long haul with you. And they believed that, and they were able to capitalize on their strengths, but also capitalize on the weakness of their opponent.
Wow. You when you were talking about that, I was just thinking about like some of the teams and years I've had where there's just such a good energy around the team, from coaches, from management, from everybody. And when everybody's almost aligned on that mission and on that journey and on the end goal, it felt like sky was the limit for us. And it comes from the coach having the confidence in us as players to really get the job done.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I know the programs that I've been a part of where we've been winning big, right? There's a huge momentum, right?
Yeah.
The moment it's going, and I've told people, it always feels like you kind of like you're moving, and it feels like you're riding that bicycle where your handlebars are shaking, right? You're going so fast that your handlebars are shaking, and you're trying to keep the train on the track and the bike going in the right direction, but you're just continuing to move forward. So you're just trying to stay in control to where nobody gets derailed, right? And I think that's the fun of it, because when you have that momentum, it is going to sometimes be a little shaky at times, but you're all moving in the right direction. And that's the beauty of that as well.
Can you describe like a perfect teammate, perfect player, not just on the field but off the field? Because those are sort of like those are the people that I want on my team, in my circle. And I kind of want to hear from your perspective what that looks like.
Oh wow, is there really one? I think because I think in a team, you're not going to have everybody that's the same, right? Like you don't want that, right? You don't want the same personalities. You don't want always the same skill levels or same skill executions or talents, right? But the perfect teammate, I think, is going to be just somebody to support you, and like you allow each other to be who you are. I would say that you allow each other to be who you are. You continually challenge each other. I think competitively, I think that's important to foster the healthy competition. I know my roommate in college and teammate in college, we would challenge each other, like who was gonna we'd race each other from the field to the stadium to lift, right? She'd go one way, I'd go the other, and see who got there first, right? So there was a healthy competition, and we were constantly challenging, but there's also an encouragement piece. And I think the encouragement piece is a very needed thing amongst teammates, and that can look differently to different people. And that's going to be, I think sometimes people think of encouragement as something that's, always just a heartfelt thing. And sometimes encouragement is just that tough love, right? It's speaking honestly, speaking truthfully, and, and just keeping someone accountable. I think you got to know when you're going to just speak kindly, and also when you have to speak a little harshly.
Yeah, knowing when to put a shoulder or an arm around a shoulder, and knowing when to kick someone in the butt.
Yeah, and I think that's I think the perfect teammates are so not so to make it plural, or the ones that can do that. They can let you be themselves, and yeah, I think that just from my time, being a teammate, I think my favorite teammates were the ones that they engage too. That was the other thing, that they engage. That's important.
Were you that, that player person that needed harsh words or some, coach in your ear? Or were you someone that needed a bit of encouragement to motivate you?
I probably accepted both. I learned from all my coaches, I wasn't somebody I didn't get reprimanded much. If anything, if I got reprimanded, it was maybe because I just made a stupid statement.
There comes a boldness from you.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a stupid statement. Like one time, I think I gave an interview, and we were playing the Raging Cajuns, and and they have obnoxious fans then, and I remember I used the word obnoxious, not knowing that could be considered rude. So, like, And so usually it was more just things like that if I got reprimanded. So,
Oh,
but no,
that's
actually, my coaches didn't have to encourage me much. That I don't. I mean, there were a few times, but most of the time, if they put me on the field, I can just go do just rep after rep. I didn't let the mistakes bother me too much.
hmm. Non-negotiables in your life. Are there any? And also what are those that you demand, from your team?
Non-negotiables. It's a good question. I haven't thought about it that one. I think if you would have asked me this a while back, a couple years back, I may have had a different thought on this. But I think with the approach that I have now with some of the freedoms and stuff, I think that I look at things a little differently. I think respect is very important. Um, and it's not so much of I think giving respect is the biggest thing. I think we're in a culture where everybody's like, oh, you have to earn respect, you have to do this. And I think just demonstrating respect is respect for your teammates, respect for your staff, the people around you, and respect for the game. I think that would be one of my non-negotiables. Sure.
Beautiful said. I mean, I've heard, the saying where it doesn't matter if it's the CEO or the guy picking up the trash, you put your hand out, you shake them, and you treat them the same. Like, I think you just go through life with that mentality, and that sense of there's no entitlement is such a big factor. And the best people in my life are the people that exemplify that really, really well.
Yeah, and I think also forgiveness is probably another one. I think that in order to play a game that is full of a lot of error and mistakes, and it challenges you emotionally. I mean, we ask the athletes to take a field in a heightened state of aggression, right? And it's not always easy to maintain your composure and stay disciplined when you're at a heightened state. So I think that forgiveness is probably another non-negotiable. Like, we have to be forgiving.
Well, I hope those fans forgave you for saying they're obnoxious.
I think so. I don't think it. Yeah, that was just a youthful mistake. I thought they'd think of it as a compliment, but
Because in your
this is,
mind, obnoxious is they're engaging, they're loud, they're
yeah,
fun
yeah.
fans, but
I failed to look further in that definition, but it was a youthful mistake. But
oh, that's
I
funny.
get reprimanded by the, you can't say that. I just did. What do you mean?
Was there a moment in your career that that changed everything? Good, bad, and different. I think you can look back now and pinpoint maybe a couple, and I'd like to hear if there is any and why those were pivotal.
In my playing career, my coaching career, or
Either.
either. Okay. In my playing career, I think I went out on my own terms. I think that was a good thing. I hung up my cleats. I was married and made the decision to start my family. So that was a huge pivotal point in my life. And I made the decision when I don't think I really was truly ready to hang it up, because I was very young. I had a lot of years ahead of me to play. And so to me, it was a time when I had to make a sacrifice for something bigger than just my own passion, right? And so that was a pivotal point in my career. And it actually led to not only starting my family, but many years that were undistracted by the game, like that I got to spend with my husband. So when I think back on that, I'm very grateful for that time. And then when it comes to my coaching career, I think, I hit a couple hardships in my coaching career to where I I I took time off from it, right? I went into private development, and that private the that opportunity coming in to do things on the private side is what opened up the baseball side. So um, it was actually around the time that I had my cancer scare. So it was one of those times I just had surgery. The year that I had surgery, I was like, okay, what do I do now? I've got to grow my business privately. And I found this man that was in our community that was doing the sports testing, and he happened to be colleagues with my pitcher from high school. I used to catch bullpens in high school for this guy that Steve Chatham. He played at I believe it was Fullerton. I think he played at Fullerton, and I saw that he was connecting, and I was like, okay, tell me about this guy. And he goes, look, he's doing sport testing and development, and that just through that time off and trying to rebuild a private business, I connected with this guy who got me back to baseball.
And it just goes back to what I was saying, like things happen for a reason, and you trust the process. And when one door closes, it's funny, 10 more open up in so many different directions.
Yeah. And now, I mean, and it wasn't always like a feelings of positivity, but it's more, again, the perseverance piece of, okay, you just got to go through this, and a door will open or something will present itself, or you'll create opportunity. And so I think it was a combination of all of that that led to where I am now.
I got asked yesterday, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm sitting there, like, where I started this year, 2022, and where I'm at now is such a different path. And so I think so many people think that they need these perfect plans and these 3-year plans, these 5-year plans. I'm like, listen, it's good to have a goal, but you just, if you can focus on the day and being grateful for what you have in that moment, winning the day, who knows where you're going to end up?
So that is a question that's asked quite a bit in the baseball world. And I just never really have an answer for it. So honestly, about that, like 5 years from now, I don't know. Like I said, the times that I've crossed my T's and dotted my I's, it just never went.
Nope.
Plan. And I think back even on, my whole life has been like that. You just never know like what life's going to present. And I think it's allowed me, kind of living that way. We had our family motto is live like the birds. And I think that living like that has allowed for us to experience life very differently. Now, some might see that as not being driven. I see it as just living according to, like you said, the day, what the day brings.
That's so important. I didn't even realize the importance of focusing on the present and winning the day until like my ACL surgery, where I'm going through that rehab and just going in every day, as you know, where the first couple of weeks is literally about, can I, bend my knee a couple more degrees? And they're just marginal, improvements each day, but going through that experience